So most people know that writers are readers. When I was younger, I was definitely more of an avid reader. I would consume tons and tons of books every month, every year, which was honestly really funny because it took forever for me to learn how to read. As I've gotten older, my book consumption has definitely decreased. A few years ago, I think I hit my low of like 30 books that year, and that was the lowest I've ever been. So after that, I made a pledge to myself that I had to read at least 3 books a month, and then I'd be at 36 books for the whole year if that's all I could do. And I've definitely been able to pass that. But 3 books a month is a good point for me. So I thought it would be fun to do a monthly recap of the books I read. And I can share the books that I read and share a bit of the story behind them, what I thought. And then I'd love if you could share the books that you read. I could always use more books on my TBR list. And then we can have a discussion and see what you're reading, what I'm reading, and we can talk about it. So I'd love if you drop the books that you read in the comment section below, and we could have a little chat down there. So without further ado, let's get started. This month was super busy for me, so I didn't have a ton of time just to sit around and read, but I did complete 3 books, and one of them is pretty lengthy. So here are the 3 books that I read this month. We have all 3 of these beautiful books. Aren't they pretty? I love the covers. Look at that. I love the green. I match with it. We have this one, and then we have this one. So these are all 3 of the books that I read this month. So I thought I would start with the first one I read and go through all 3. So this month began with A Rumored Fortune. And I did post about this on my Instagram. If you're following me there, then you've heard a bit about my thoughts there. If you're not following me, go check it out. A Rumored Fortune, I picked this up and I kind of just thought it was going to be a boring fortune hunter book. It did not end up being like that. It was actually really good. I really enjoyed it. It was really, really well written. There was a lot of in-depth character development. 2 of the characters were just so much fun to read. I had way too much fun reading them. I really, really enjoyed Donegan's character and then his interactions with Tressa. It was really hilarious and strangely relatable because I feel like I kind of have similar things with the honesty factor. So I really enjoyed this book. There was so many elements of mysteries. It was a great enemies to lovers if you're interested and love that trope. And there was also a lot of character growth. So the characters were growing, changing in a good way. So I really enjoyed this book overall, and I thought it was really, really well executed, really well written. The story was succinct and precise, and there was just a lot of different threads going on all at once, which I really enjoy. I don't really love it when the books are just boring and it's just way too predictable. And this was not predictable. There were some things that happened that, I'm not going to spoil anything, but there were a few things that I was just like, oh, I was not expecting that or ready for that. And I really enjoyed that. And I loved the character development and the characters themselves. The interactions between them were just hilarious. So that is A Rumored Fortune. I really enjoyed this book this month. Next book I read, and this one took me a while because it's really thick. Look at that. But it has such a pretty cover. It's called not A Russian Winter. It's just Russian Winter. But it was really, really good. I actually got both of these books at a library sale in November. And I only bought them because they were like $2 a book. And I can't pass up a sale when the books are that cheap. So these have been sitting on my shelf for months. And I was just like, I just need to read some new books. I want to just try something new. And so I read A Rumored Fortune, and then I was like, okay, there's another one that I haven't read that was from that sale. And so I picked up Russian Winter, and I loved it. It was so well written, so good. So it is definitely really, really long. Let's see how many pages. It's over 450 pages. And I'm not the person that sticks around. I can stick around for a long book if it's good. I finish this. But usually I don't start long books because, I don't know, they're kind of overwhelming. My brother can read like thick multi-thousand page books, but those stress me out. So I usually stick to like normal page counts. But this was an exception. And I picked it up not really knowing what it was about. I'm not really keen on reading the back cover blurbs because I feel like they spoil things. So I think I did read a little bit of it, but I didn't read a ton. And all I knew was that it was about a Russian ballerina. It's about a lot more than a Russian ballerina. It's about a lot more than that. But it's so good. So basically, it's a story of a professional ballerina in Russia, And it goes to later in her life when she's old, she can't dance, and she's auctioning off her jewelry collection. And in doing so, it brings up a lot of past memories, past people, and a lot of mystery. And so going in this, I did not realize how many POVs there were going to be. I started the book and it was just about Nina, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. She's old. I didn't know anything was happening. And then we start bouncing between POVs and it just feels like they're random. I kind of got an idea because one of the POVs was the jeweler. Her name was Drew, and there was a bit with her and then with old Nina. And then we got to a young Nina when she was a little girl and she was just starting ballet. And then that POV started growing as she got older and met the love of her life and got married, and things started happening and Russia was falling apart. And then we also had the POV of a guy named Gregory, who was a total mystery to me. So he was a professor, and he was a translator of Russian poems. And I thought, oh, that's really cool. Russia, Nina, the ballerina, everything, that's cool. I did not realize quite how much it would all tie together. And I'm not going to spoil anything because I do want you to actually read these books, and I don't want to ruin them for you. But there was a lot of intricacy between all the plots and everything that was happening. Whenever I felt like I just wanted to put down the book, not because I was tired of reading, but because I was actually tired and I needed to go to bed, she would drop a hint. And then I start thinking about, oh, this character could be with this one and all this could happen and it could all tie together like this. And I think I thought through like how it could end like 5 times. And every time I was wrong, because then as soon as I'd be like, this is going to be the ending, this is how it's going to work, then she would drop another hint and it's like, no, that does not happen because she said this and that would contradict this. And it was just such a good book and phenomenally written. The story was really intriguing and it draws you in, and it's just really, really well written, and I really, really enjoyed it. So this one did take me a bit longer to read just because while I was reading this, a lot was going on in my life and I didn't have a ton of time to read, and it's a thick book. So it took me quite a while. I think this took me most of March. And then for the last book that I read this month, this is actually a new release. This is called When Tomorrow Came. I love this cover. I love this color of green, and I just love how it looks all together. It's just so gorgeous. And I thought the name When Tomorrow Came was really poetic and pretty. And then when I started reading, I'm like, oh, this is cool how it all ties together, because it's about these 2 siblings, Heath and Nan, who are waiting for their father to come back. He left them as children and they're growing up waiting for him to come, and Heath is always telling his little sister that their father will come today or tomorrow and they just have to wait. So this is a story of when tomorrow actually came and their father comes back, and things did not go how they had planned or hoped for, which is honestly really sad because they were really sweet characters. But then again, I put my characters through a ton that they don't deserve. But that's called a good story, okay? So basically, early on in the story, Nan, who is the younger sister, she gets rescued by a London gentleman and taken into his home, and she grows up as his daughter. He has a wife and 2 children. She is well cared for, and she does not need anything. Whereas her brother is still struggling, and he is honestly really sweet because he doesn't want to go and rescue her from it because he knows that what she's living now is better than what he could give her because they were living in a crate on the London streets. And so he chooses to stay away and chooses to let this British family take her and raise her as their own. It's honestly really sad, but I really love his desire to protect her, and in doing what was hard for her, and she struggled with it a ton, but in doing that, he gave her what he couldn't give her. I also really enjoyed Nan as a character, and it was just really fun to see their dynamics and then see what happened with Nan and Gilbert. There was a lot of death in this book. Not in a bad way, there was just people that were characters that died, which is the definition of death in books. Anyways, there was one death in particular that I didn't really love. It just felt super sudden and there wasn't a great setup to it. There were other deaths of different characters that I'm not going to say who they were, but they aren't with us anymore in book life. But those felt a bit more set up and they had a bit more mystery surrounding them. I also really loved how it was written with the time changes. So the book starts when they are just kids, but I love that it wasn't just a prologue, because sometimes books are just like, oh, here is the backstory that leads into this. And I enjoyed that we actually got to travel through time with them. And then it showed just how much they were waiting for tomorrow to come. And then when it came, how much that was different than what they expected. When Tomorrow Came by Hannah Linder. It just came out actually 10 days ago when this video drops. And it was really good. I really enjoyed it. So these are the 3 books that I read this month. Life was pretty crazy this month, so I didn't have a ton of extra time to read, but I did enjoy the ones that I read this month. So if you read any books this month, I would love if you could drop a comment down below and share what books you read this month. I would love to talk about it, to see what books I could put on my to-be-read list, and then just chat about the books that you read and see what they were about. So if you read any books that you really enjoyed, or if you just read books this month, drop them in the comments below and let's talk about them. And if you haven't, please hit the subscribe button. It would mean so much to me if you would subscribe and follow along on my journey. I will see you in the next video, and I have some fun things planned, so stay tuned. I don't really have many bad things to say about them. Oh yeah, I do have one bad thing to say about it. That sounds so terrible.